We're excited about Texas. We're calling in live from Texas here at the ChildcareCRM HQ in Dallas. So really excited about everybody joining us here today. Thank you so much for the familiar faces out there. I saw a couple names. Welcome back. For some new ones that are out there, really excited to have you join us here today to talk about the 5 mistakes to enroll, or the 5 mistakes to avoid when enrolling families. And wanted to always give you guys a little bit of some perspective on where this information is coming from. So every year, we look at the customers that we have, we look at the industry and the market itself, and from our 13 years in business, we have taken our 5,000 customers and gathered all the data that you're gonna see today to help compile this report and compile this webinar. So when we talk about the best practices and the things that we're talking about, these are real use cases from real customers and other similar areas within the market that we're seeing. So a little bit more about this, right? So we're in 5 countries right now, 3.5 million leads engaged, and 875,000 enrollments. So when we talk about where this data is coming from, it is a large set that is reviewed annually. And ultimately what this means is $29 billion in center revenue generated for our customers. And fortunately for us, many of the customers have been with us for a long time. So for some of those out there who are still with us, thank you. And again, for the new ones, really excited to have you join. And what we're gonna be talking about today, as the webinar title would suggest, the 5 mistakes to avoid when enrolling families. We're gonna talk about what today's parents are looking for. The millennial generation, very unique generation, but those are your parents today. And then ultimately, how to improve the registration experience for families and for your staff. So when you think about enrollment, it really keys in on both areas. What is the experience that you're giving to your parents? What is the experience that you're giving your staff? How are you supporting both of them to really have a strong day one start for new families?
You are.
So yes, good one. My name is Mike Hook. I'm the VP of Sales here at ChildcareCRM, and I'm joined by Lisa Henkel.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I am the Vice President of Education and Training here at ChildcareCRM, and I love to throw my credential in there. I am not a coder. I do not write software. I am a childcare person, and I have been in the seats that you are in because I've been in all of them. Everything from assistant teacher up to a chief operating officer of a multi-site location. So as Mike said, the things that we're talking about today, these are real, true scenarios that happen every day in our industry, specific to childcare. I was laughing at myself. I was thinking about how mostly what I share are all the things I did wrong, and trying to help you guys understand the things that you can do right to benefit from my mistakes. And so that's a big part of what we're talking about today. So I'm going to start out with one of the things that happens right off the bat, and that is we enroll people and we get paperwork. Paperwork, we love paperwork, we love pens and pencils. And one of the things that we find when we get that paperwork, and one of the obstacles that we have to overcome as those people in childcare, is simply interpreting people's handwriting and getting data that maybe is not legible to us. You know, we give those packets to families, and we always have that one parent who wanted to get the packet back and didn't remember the child's pediatric dentist name, and so they thought if they just put a scribbly line in there that would suffice, and that we wouldn't come back and say, but wait, what's the actual name here? I can't read this. So, you know, we're depending on people to decipher handwriting and to understand our many, many packets of information and enrollment things that we need there. The other thing that we're doing is we are still, like I said, paper and pencil, and we're really relying on that method of record keeping. And I think as more and more things happen, we recognize that this is a vulnerable way to hold our data. Oh, I see that. That's okay. You know, there's a lot of a vulnerability with paper data. It can get lost, it can get misshuffled, and it can be easily destroyed. You know, we have fire and floods. There was a case a while back that we had talked about where an entire school system's records were damaged in a flood, and they had no way to retrieve that. So what we're talking about as being a mistake is holding that insecure and vulnerable data in a way that it cannot then be retrieved later.
Speaking of mistakes by human beings, you may have noticed my mistake.
So real-time examples, we're always a fan of those. And when we talk about insecure and vulnerable data, when we talk about handwriting, there's a couple things that come to mind here. You know, as Lisa said, there's these examples of fires and floods. There's parents who really are rushing to get things done. And it really comes down to time and accuracy. Right? We can't ever get more time back in the day, and everybody knows there's always too many things to do. I don't think that I have spoken to a single person who's like, oh yeah, I got everything done today. My to-do list is done, I feel great. There's always a couple more things that pop up throughout the day. So by being able to not only address data, being able to address the parents, you actually find ways to get time back in your day. Not that you won't use it, I don't think it's any free time at all, but to focus on the things that are actually building your standing within the community, that are building your brand within the community, as opposed to sitting on a keyboard and typing things in. And another big part of that, you know, when we talk about time, the time it takes, lack of follow-up becomes a really big part of enrolling families and making sure that you are staying ahead of the competition. So I think when we talk about follow-up, you know, parents are reaching out to more and more centers than ever before. So they're looking at 6 centers, they're probably reaching out to 4, maybe touring 3, and this isn't a perfect world where parents are slowly making decisions. But I think when we talk about buying a service, or in this case, parents looking out for care, it's really about, well, not only who's reaching up and who's following out, but who's following up first. So 70% of the centers that reach out first will end up winning the enrollment. And what that means is that, think about the last time you filled out a form online, or think about the last time you received an inquiry from your families, right? Buying these services, who's gonna end up winning that deal? Who's gonna end up winning the business that's out there? I think there was a time not too long ago when I think about reaching out for help. You know, think about renting a home is a good example that I always like to use. I've moved a bit in my life, and when I look for rentals, one of the things I do is I'll hop on Zillow, and I'll go and fill out a request to see a handful of different homes, apartments, condos. And without fail, there's always 2 or 3 that just don't get back to me within the first couple days. And what I think when somebody doesn't get back to me is, well, I'm somebody who would be filling a spot that they need filled, and they don't even care enough to get back to me quickly. They're not really serious here. Now, that's just a follow-up right at the beginning. There are other areas of follow-ups to consider, too, after the tour, something that we'll talk about a little bit later, the importance of making sure that you reach out and follow up there. After someone says, yes, I want to move forward. Okay, well, how are we following up to get the enrollment paperwork? And there's a lot of different little areas throughout the process of you having a parent from the first time that they reach out all the way to getting them day one that you should really be engaging these families with.
I want to talk about, as Mike, when he very first introduced what we'd be discussing today, he talked about different areas of impact. And so we're going to talk about having a process and a system that impacts parents, a process and a system that impacts you as a director, as a facilitator of a program. And so what we're trying to do with all of this, and one of the mistakes that we want to avoid is having any of these processes be inconvenient or hard to complete. One of the things that we do that could be an impediment to families is that we're asking them to fill out paperwork. And we're not just asking them to fill out paperwork because we love paperwork, because we know that we don't, but the way that we're asking them to fill it out is really inconvenient for our parents. Couple of things to know. One of the things that we're doing is we are giving parents a paper packet and saying, go ahead and fill this out and bring it back to us. Another thing that we might do is we might send them a packet in an email. You know, we might say, hey, we're going to make this easier for you. We're going to send it to you in an email, without kind of realizing our audience and the fact that that actually makes it harder for them. One of the statistics that we'll share here is that 42% of millennials don't even own a printer. So what we're doing is we're sending them a packet via email, asking them to figure out a way to get it printed out. You know, they're going to have to find a local Kinko's or go get a printer, get it printed out, fill it out manually, and then either scan it or bring it back to us. Same sort of process when we're ready to take that registration fee. Most centers, we've found through our research, a majority of centers are still doing that via paper check. And 52% of millennials don't own a checkbook. Some millennials, my own children included, do not know how to fill out a check. And so while we think that we're doing things that are making it easier to have an impact on families, we're actually making it a little bit more difficult for them. And then same situation, but looking at it from the staff side, you know, what's the impact to you guys? The impact when I have a paper packet that I've sent home with somebody is that they've got to bring it back. So I'm increasing foot traffic in my building, which is not something that we want to do in our COVID times. When they come back with that paper packet, they usually don't schedule an appointment to do so. So it's usually happening at a time that is inconvenient when you've got a lot of things going on in your building, and we know that you've got a lot of things going on in your building pretty much all the time. And then after we have all of that situated, where we actually have the packet back, then we're going to ask our staff or ourselves to manually enter that form into another management system. So we're taking what is paper and pencil and putting it into some digital format there, which takes time and energy to do that. So not really convenient for anyone involved, not for the parents or for you.
Yeah, and look, I think there's a big theme here when we talk about the parents and the staff, and one thing that I think is identical between the two of them, and it goes back to, well, there's not really enough time in the day, right? Parents don't want to be going back and forth, especially those parents who are working full-time too, as many are. One of the things we're seeing as well, right, is that more women are going back into the workplace, a lot of that because of care, so it matters to them finding the right care. They want to do it quickly. They want to make it very helpful for them, and they want to feel like, yeah, this is going to be something that's going to serve me well. So having that time back for the parents is always big, and then the staff, of course, too. So a lot of time doing manual entry, as we talked about a little bit earlier when we talk about some of the follow-up items, but also there's a lot of time spent. I shouldn't say spent, but I should say wasted, that could be spent elsewhere. So, Lisa, I want to turn it back over to you. I know you've talked a lot about what we've done with millennials and some of the key things about that demographic.
Yeah, you know, we've mentioned millennials quite a bit, and there's a reason for that. It's not random. One of the things that we know is that 80% of parents with children under 12 right now are millennials. So that tells us the people who are looking for care are millennials, and they have expectations. I'm not going to read through all of these statistics, but you're welcome to look at it. But there's a lot of key things that we know. 80% of them are in that millennial generation. We know that they don't have printers. You know, that's important when we think about what our process and what our parent experience looks like. And we also know that they prefer to communicate by text. If you're not talking with your parents by text, you might want to reevaluate how you're talking with your parents, because we know that they would prefer that over any other method. A phone call, an email, they'd rather have it on a text. And we also know that millennials like to do things online and in a digital way. That's really important to them.
And so what we've seen with millennials, right, like this generation, why do we talk about them so much? Well, one, they're really relevant for everybody here today because those are your parents. But two, the millennial generation has undergone a lot of change. Like when you think about the whole range of millennials, it started out with AOL and the internet, the dot-com boom, right? Like that generation got to see that start and really take hold. They got to see the evolution of cell phones, from flip phones to BlackBerries when those were still around to the first iPhones and Android phones. There was a massive shift from having to wait for information. The millennial generation has actually seen that shift of, waiting Sunday night for a TV show to come out and actually talking about it throughout the week to getting all of them released on Netflix all at once and being able to binge watch and do all these different things. So this generation has not only seen a wide variety of things, they know what's capable and they know what evolving businesses should be able to do and how they should be able to engage them. And if you're not doing that today, how they really engage with every other area, they're going to view you as someone who's stuck a little bit in the past. That's not really appealing to millennials. So when we think about this demographic and when you think about, well, why is this important? Does it really matter if I text my millennial parents? Does it really matter if I respond to inquiries quickly? It does. It does because these first impressions need to continue to go because of how millennials have grown up. So we've got a little poll for everybody. Want to get you involved a little bit in our conversation here today. And would love to hear from everyone about online purchases. So what's the last thing that you purchased online? Was it groceries or food, home essentials or clothing, personal finance or banking? Did anyone get a car or a home? So we'll give it a little bit for everyone to reply. We're seeing a lot of early entries here for the home essentials and clothing. Lisa, what's the last thing you bought online?
Oh my gosh, if I went a day without buying something on Amazon, I think Amazon would reach out to make sure that I'm okay. I think they would check in on my well-being. So I'd have to go home essentials and clothing.
Yeah, I think mine's the same. I bought a book.
Yeah?
On the same,
But I gotta tell you, I've done all of these. I've purchased every single one, and I am not a millennial. And so if this becomes your way of purchasing, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. So we'll give it a couple more seconds here, maybe about 5 seconds. We've got almost everyone has participated here. I appreciate that. Home essentials and clothing, 69%. Groceries and food, 24%. Personal finance and banking, 7%. We haven't bought any cars or homes, so no big purchases lately out of everybody. But thank you. Thank you for participating. I think the really interesting thing here, right, is that everybody is buying things online. And yet, if you think about your business, are you allowing parents to do the same thing? So as we move through now and kind of flip over to the next side, right? We've discussed the problems. What are the things that you're facing? And hopefully a couple of these things have already stuck out to you that you're like, oh, I'm doing that, and there's an easy fix for this. And a lot of these things are not really labor-intensive fixes. They're simple, but they're not always easy to implement consistently. So when we talk about the benefits of digital registration, we talked a lot about time. On average right now, and think about this in your own centers, in your own businesses, on average what we're seeing is it takes more than 2 weeks for a family to fill out and return the enrollment paperwork, right? Whereas everything else they're doing, we talk about the digital age. We talk about how millennials grew up, the speed of filling things out, having to do things once as opposed to multiple times. Well, online enrollment paperwork, and what we've seen from those people who are using that within our survey and within our reports, goes from 2 weeks down to 4 days. Now, I'd like for you to think for a moment, what could you do with 10 days back of not following up with families, of not reviewing legible data, with not chasing down paperwork, with not worrying about, oh my, am I actually going to fill this spot even though the family told me yes? It's a big difference. So by increasing the number of families registering, you can actually, again, save some time, go back and engage with those families, prep for a really strong day one, and keep your tours coming in so that you can start developing and building those wait lists. The other thing that we talk about is making it secure and making it safe. So in addition to digital registration, getting rid of the worry of a fire or a flood or anything happening where, you now need to go re-register and get paperwork over again, digital signatures, these are, yes, legally binding, they are accepted, they are tagged. So even though it's not, again, the traditional pen and paper, digital signatures, these are not new. So this is something that is widely accepted, it is very secure, and it also, again, makes it very easy for your parents to fill something out in a way that they're comfortable with, that they're used to, and that would be very familiar for them.
So, Mike, I'm going to toot our own horn here a little bit, because one of the things that I like to point out, again, is that impact to families. And I have to read this. I hate to read off the slide, but no one likes to repeat themselves in person or on paper. And sometimes we don't even realize how much redundancy exists in our paperwork. One of the things that I was able to do is a research project on enrollment forms. And we found that on average, the enrollment packet itself, just on average, is about 13 pages. It's a lot of paperwork. And within those 13 pages, we are asking parents, on average, to fill out their own name 9 different times. Just their own name, first name, last name, 9 times to write that down. And so sometimes we think just because we make it digital that we make that redundancy go away. And I just want to point out that that's not always the case. I obviously am an advocate for our own product, Childcare Forms. I think it's one of the best that's out there. And the reason that I advocate for that particular one is because even if you go with another digital solution, some of the other things that you may have used out there, like a Hello Sign or a DocuSign, those are digital solutions and they will help, but you don't eliminate the redundancy. Because even with those types of products, you still have to go in and fill in every blank. And so if you have paperwork that requires that parent name 9 different times, then you still have to fill that out at 9 times. And that's a lot of filling out. And so with our particular process, we have developed a way that we have one interview that the parent just fills out the information one time, and then it overlays onto the different paperwork that's needed. Same thing with, the children's information. You just have to fill it out one time. If you happen to couple Childcare Forms and ChildcareCRM, then the impact on the parent is even greater, because at that point, any information that you already have about the parent will be pre-filled into that interview. And the parent's just validating. They're not even filling in information at that point. They're just saying, yes, this is correct. And so again, when we're thinking about how easy it is for parents to fill out a process, how can we make it even better? And then the same thing on the provider side. We all have paperwork that has to be filled out multiple times. And so when the parent fills out that initial paperwork, they're creating a login, an account. And so when it's time to update the paperwork, we're able to then just do a quick update. They just validate the information that's already there, instead of having every parent refill out all of the paperwork annually, as we know some of those are required. Especially those families, you guys out there who are working with FDA food programs. Wow, that is one heck of a form. And to have that filled out annually, you can understand the impact on both the parents and you as providers, in having a real-time saving method there of time and energy.
So it's easier, right? Things online are easier, but it's not just about the fields. It's the fields, yes, but it's also about access anywhere. So when we talk about really all of the benefits that we've kind of gone through today, right? They're secure, you can fill them out, all the required fields are filled in there, it cuts down on your review process. You know, it's really friendly for parents and staff, it's keying in on both sides of the people who interact with these forms on a regular basis. The ability to access them anywhere means that you're no longer time bound. So Lisa, earlier, you were talking a little bit about the unpredictability of parents stopping in and dropping off paper packets, and the fact that there's foot traffic in the center that might be unwanted. The fact that all of a sudden, you might not have anyone at the front desk to take these forms when they come in. And then what does a parent do? Do they leave them there? Do they walk away? Did you take them in? There's a lot of unknowns. So when we talk about the ability to access these anywhere at any time, it means parents have the ability to log in and fill out their forms. Again, most parents are working, especially, you know, if you're looking at an infant classroom that, you know, you're not going to be ready for 3 to 6 months, but you want to look at care really early because of the competitive marketplace. Well, mom and dad probably are both still working. Are they going to fill these forms out during the day, or are they going to do them after hours? And then once they fill them out, who's coming in to drop them off? So what we've noticed from our users is that over half of the forms that are filled out are returned after 7 p.m. That means that parents are going home at night, filling these forms out, and then in the morning, center directors, the enrollment specialists, they can go in and actually see the completed forms, having the peace of mind that they're done and starting their day that way. So it's a really nice way to allow you to stay open, allow you to work overnight at hours that are convenient without ever having to step foot in your center, without having to do more work. And this also applies for other scenarios. I think one of the trends that we've seen now more than ever is people like to live a little bit more of a nomadic life. They're traveling, they might not want to be in a city, they might be moving, they might be doing 6 months in one city, 6 months in another city. When you look at what this means, it means that there's a lot of people who might be coming from out of state too. So offering something like this will increase your reach and ability to have parents enroll ahead of time before they step into that first day. And then we talk about the data sync in real time. So this goes back to the ability to have that critical information pass over into a management system. Have that critical information that you've already gathered show up on the online enrollment packets. So we want to make sure that you have all the up-to-date information. Communication is a really big factor for parents at any point in their journey in the relationship with you. You need to have the right email and phone numbers, right? When we talk about child names and unique spelling and everything else, that really is so easy to make a minor mistake on, especially when you're seeing it from a lot of different areas. We want this data sync over in real time. It's going to ensure that scheduling gets done sooner. It's going to lead to increased enrollments, and ultimately, the faster you can fill your center, the better the experience for parents, more revenue you'll have for your business. And ultimately, the more word of mouth referrals that you'll be able to capture as well. And some of the last big things here, because they always come up, is that safety and information security. So safety is always a priority. It is for us. I know it is for you. When you look at doing things online, this is a big topic. And so again, when we talk about digitizing these processes, when we talk about going online and gathering parent information, we're talking about reducing foot traffic in the building. We're talking about offering an online and secure way for you to communicate with parents. And we're talking about using all of the key encryption methodology that's out there today. This stuff is a little bit more on the boring side, admittedly, but it is important to know that there is peace of mind. And I always like to say, when you think about secure information that you always have access to, first, paper and filing cabinets and everything that's just sitting in your center today, there's a really big risk profile, and it's a lot different. So by going online, you're actually doing your parents and their children a favor, in addition to yourself. And the other piece of this, right, we talked a little bit about payments earlier, speeding up the registration process. Financial security is a big deal. So Lisa mentioned most millennials don't even have checkbooks today. That's true. I do not have one. I don't know any of my friends who have one right now. We are paying through our bank account, we're paying through online merchants and retailers, we're paying through Venmo. There's a lot of different areas that we pay through, but all of it is digital, and all of it's at the click of a button. So whether it's online banking, whether it's taking that payment, the financial security of being able to pay online, again, by offering this option to millennials, you're telling them, we understand you, we're relevant and up to date, we use technology to our advantage, we're investing in our business to be modern with the times, which is why we're also going to be investing in your children and giving them the best care possible. It really all is linked like that. It might seem like a stretch, but that's how millennials, much like myself, process this information. Because if we can't engage with you in that way, we're just not going to. Even with something as essential as care that you 100% need. So when you think about online payments, when you think about completing this enrollment process, it's about allowing parents and yourselves to complete that registration process, get the payment that you need, and then be able to close the books on that. Get ready for day one and really finish this enrollment process with a great experience. So the parents are excited to start, and you guys are all excited to have them there. So we're gonna open this all up for Q&A now. I know there's a Q&A button here. We've got the chat, but some next steps before we get into answering the questions is stay tuned for an email from us tomorrow. You'll be able to download your certificate of attendance. You're gonna receive the recording from today's webinar, and we're also gonna send you access to the Ultimate Enrollment Packet Guide template, including our industry standard packet.